over the time, as I start collecting these super factors and black 101s and stuff, I start to buy the ones I can find, but then it's like, okay, which are like the best ones? And then it always comes down to the first ones, are usually the first ones. And then it gets even more crazy where I go from, now I don't want the first black prism. I actually want the first one of ones ever.
All right, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Cards and Content. A lot to get to on today's episode. We have a special guest who actually flew with less than 24 hours notice from Florida to Ohio, so excited to get into that interview later. But first, we will start with the one thing today. And as a Patriots fan, the one thing on my mind at the moment is we just traded Joe Milton. And I don't bring that up because I think I'm going to miss Joe Milton. I bring that up with this idea that we sold a few Joe Milton cards, whether that was on Check On My Cards or eBay or during our Whatnot card show, which I will get to in a second. But this idea of how quickly a player's market can change and what news like that can do to a player's market so quickly. And how I believe this will not be the last time we will see this between now and, let's say, the draft. I think the draft will have more of these, but this is one of those things I've really tried to pay attention to over the years, and I think this leads to a lot of opportunities with specific players. Milton is just a perfect example of this, where you're brought in the same time as a guy like Drake May, who is the higher pick, expected to be the guy. Milton gets in at the final game of the season. Unfortunately, I remember this because the Patriots had the number one pick going into the last game of the season. Joe Milton comes in, balls out. The Patriots win the game and drop from 1 to 4. So shout out Joe Milton. We did get a 5th and a 7th, I think, was the trade. So we got a couple picks out of him. But Joe Milton gets traded and his stuff starts to sell. And I think it's this idea that there's optimism. Is it when a player's relevant? Is it when a player gets traded? I mean, I'm going to get on here and say I am not the biggest believer in Dak Prescott. I think he's a serviceable quarterback. I don't think he's the reason the Dallas Cowboys are going to win a Super Bowl or go to the Super Bowl. So I'm not a believer in Dak Prescott. So do I think Joe Milton is going to come in and be better than Dak Prescott? No, I do not. But Joe Milton, preseason games, buzz, offseason, that's just how the market works. And this, to me, is the start of what I would imagine is a short-term life cycle for Joe Milton. Again, I think there's some immediate demand now. And then as we get closer to the start of the season and you see him in preseason games, this is the way it works in cards now. And it's just so crazy to see. We've got some sales pulled up. Listen to this. This will prove how crazy this is in real time. Brian, what's today's date? Friday, April 4th? So today's the 4th. We're filming this on the 4th. Yesterday, a Joe Milton vertical PSA 9 gold kaboom. This is according to Card Ladder. Sold on eBay. This is a PSA 9 gold vertical kaboom of Joe Milton. $10,000. $10,000. National Treasures. That's from earlier. Brian, search recent first, because that sold yesterday. Let's search recent. You search by price again. So now go to price, Brian. It's right next to the search bar. I'm walking Brian through this while we're live on a podcast. So price, type in like $150. Let's see some of the more recent sales here, because this is what's happened when guys get when traded real time like this. Milton Micro Mosaic, $150 for a guy that's going to Dallas to be the backup. Gold standard patch auto to 15 sold today on auction for $238. Man, it seems like being in the backup quarterback market might be the move. Prism, draft picks, Saturday Stars, black gold. Draft picks, this is a Tennessee jersey. Sold today, $250, Joe Milton. It's just crazy how this works. No rhyme or reason. Joe Milton may not start, likely will not start, but the optimistic investor, optimistic person, we'll talk more about this a little bit on the interview, because we filmed that a minute ago. But it's this idea that like every time we get closer to the start of the season, everybody is gonna start. Everybody's gonna win a Super Bowl. Everybody's gonna be an NFL MVP. And clearly, there's some of that optimism built into Joe Milton's pricing when you see multiple sales in the last 24 hours. Now, Joe Milton may be the guy. He may be awesome. That could happen. I'm not saying it is. I'm not saying it's not. I don't believe that to be the case. But if it does happen, Joe Milton would be an example. But, you could see guys like potentially Hendon Hooker getting traded on draft day from the Lions to another team. He's been there a little while. We could see guys like, and this will be the same thing with Brandon Ayuk. There's been some talks that Ayuk could get traded. We're in Ohio. The Browns have been brought up a lot in the Brandon Ayuk pursuit. Brandon Ayuk gets traded to the Browns on draft day. Maybe we've got some buzz there. Kirk Cousins gets traded out of Atlanta. Could be some buzz there. Like Sam Darnold gets traded to Seattle. JJ McCarthy stuff takes a bump. It's crazy how the offseason works. It seemed like there used to be a lot more of a time where the offseason was a little bit longer. You could prospect guys in the offseason, see who is maybe going to be the guy. Now we got Joe Milton getting traded to the Dallas Cowboys for a 5th and a 7th, and we got $10,000 gold kabooms selling the day of that trade. Crazy how the card market works now, especially for quarterbacks, but it doesn't seem like there's a lot of offseason right now in the NFL market with sales like that with, a guy like Joe Milton. So certainly on my mind right now. The other thing on my mind, just because I'm essentially running on fumes here, yesterday, we've talked about it for a few weeks now, ran the Whatnot card show. We had talked about this previously, aiming to be the biggest sale we had ever done on Whatnot. Ended up making this a 12-hour stream. Our team is currently in the process of shipping 9,000 plus orders. We went into the show with the goal of 5,000 orders, hit 5,000 orders in less than 90 minutes. It was absolutely insane. Certainly one of the best the best Whatnot card shows sales we had ever run. Again, I had talked about it for weeks, about the effort, the planning, what kind of goes into this, and just cool to share that. It's something we've worked really hard to kind of build, and I used to share back in the day, like the eBay numbers, when we built up eBay to do $100,000, when we built up eBay to set records for monthly number of transactions, like those things are cool to share, and to be able to build this, this Whatnot, or to build a live stream to sell 9,000 unique items in one setting is really cool. But now comes the part of trying to ship 9,000 items when you're anticipating shipping 5,000. So a lot of back end work here, but shout out to our team for really putting on a finals-like performance on something like that, because it was a lot of work, a lot of hands on deck. If you follow the content, you know how much content we put out about everything Whatnot Card Show. We did 25K in giveaways, 1,200 prison packs at $1. We had 2,500 items for sale. We ran 100K sets at $1. It was $1,500 in Zion cases, a little bit of everything. So really cool to go in with something with like a 5,000 item goal and hit 9,000 total orders over the course of a 12-hour stream. So really, really cool. But now for us, we're real big on like, how do we level up? We think this way with trade nights, with content, with a lot of the things we do. It's okay. This is where we got to. What's next, and how do we level up? And that's what's on our mind now. On my mind though, I will say, Brian and I talked about this a little bit before. We really wanted to get a Pokemon guest on the podcast this week. Our guest is amazing that we did get on, and it worked out well, and we're going to get a Pokemon guest here soon. We're working on that now. But one of the things we were talking about internally here is, saw some news yesterday. I want to pull up my phone and give some credit. So this is Ryan's_Cardhouse on IG posted about this. It says 24% tariffs are about to rock the Japanese Pokemon market. These next few days and weeks are going to be interesting to see how this already crazy market reacts. So I'm very curious, man. We've got to get a Pokemon guest on here before too long to just understand why the Pokemon market is where it's at. Again, I can only kind of speak to what I see from just a sales data perspective in our business and how crazy it is, and just the volume, the number of transactions. But now you've got tariffs being added to Japanese Pokemon coming over to the U.S. in a market that's already hot and already has that kind of demand. Hopefully we can get Ryan or another great Pokemon, guest on here soon to talk about that. But what, I'm not going to sit here and talk too much about it. We've got a great episode to get into, or a great interview to get into. But when a market like that is already hot, and we're going to throw some fuel on that fire with a 24% tariff on that price, going to be interesting to see if the Pokemon market continues to just absolutely skyrocket. So we'll see. Hopefully we have more on that here soon. And then soon as in this week, Fanatics Fest pre-sale. Brian and I were looking at some schedules and looking at Fanatics Fest, pulled up the website, and the first thing we noticed is pre-sales dropped this week. So On Location Platinum VIP pre-sale dropped 2 hours before this episode went live, Monday, April 7th, 10 a.m. Eastern. And then VIP pre-sale drops Wednesday at 10 a.m. and general on sale drops Thursday, April 10th at 10 a.m. So went to the Fanatics Fest last year, and it was post-national. This year, pre-national. What is it, Brian? About a month before. June 20th through the 22nd in New York City at the Javits Center. Again, last year. I think it was about a month after the national. Have to officially check the dates, but I think that's when it was. It was last year. But how will Fanatics events, the Fanatics team, Tops, improve on a solid year one at Fanatics Fest? And what will the turnout be like this year being before the national? Will that impact attendance at Fanatics Fest versus attendance at the national? I would tell you it's likely beneficial for Fanatics Fest to be before the national. The heart of the summer, getting people before going back to school, families, again, planning vacations around it. I would imagine that's pro Fanatics Fest. Do I think it would impact the national at an extreme level in a negative sense? No, I do not. I think at the moment, the national is the event for trading cards. It is the event, mostly for sports cards. I think sports cards, the national, that is the can't miss event. End of July, right before back to school, right before the NFL preseason. The national is the event. But Fanatics Fest during the summer now, when kids are out of school, I mentioned earlier, families planning vacations there. This has always been one of the talks with Fanatics Fest. We talked about this last year going into the show. It's in New York City. It is not cheap to get to New York City. It is expensive, very expensive. As much as I don't love the Cleveland National and just that location as much, it's not exactly New York City prices to get to New York City or to get to Cleveland for the National. They're not the same. So cost much higher in New York City than in Cleveland. But the National's in Chicago this year. It's in Rosemont. It's definitely not cheap there. We'll get more into the National coming up here in a future episode. We've got some conversation planned around that. But very, very intrigued to see what Fanatics events, their team, has in store for Fanatics Fest. Brian, can you pull up some of the athletes here? I was looking at some of the athletes earlier. I think I saw Jane Daniels, Tom Brady, Derek Jeter. I mean, the first couple they mentioned in the first lines, Brady, Jeter, Manning, and Eli and Peyton Manning. Jane Daniels, Allen Iverson, Wade, Cody Rhodes, Undertaker, Rhea Ripley, Liv Morgan, Stroud, Caleb, Parsons. I mean, insane. The talent alone is absolutely crazy. That was one of the coolest things last year. We're sitting at our table, setting up in the card space, and Gronk is at the table next to us, spiking cards on our friend's Mealy Pops on his table. And Jake Paul it was Jake Paul, right, Brian? Jake Paul and Livy Dunn were out walking around buying cards. And Tom Brady comes up and buys a Tom Brady, Joe Montana, Duolato. Like, you don't see that a lot of places. That was really cool. I think Grant Williams, that was also where Grant Williams hit that Luka RPA. Grant Williams, basketball player, fellow card collector, hit a Luka Doncic patch auto. I think that was low numbered too. I'd have to see the video for the actual numbering, but just how cool that was with some of those athletes walking around at the show. I'm really excited. The Javits Center is a beautiful, beautiful venue. That's the first time we had ever been there for a venue. It is amazing. I've heard it's where New York Comic Con is. We had never been there before. it was definitely cool. New York has a lot of cool dinners, a lot of great people, a lot of marketing, a lot of networking, a lot of cool cards sold. Got to do some content on stage at that show. Loved it. We definitely had a good time. Even post-national, it was great. I am looking forward to going back. I'm looking forward to being there. We're under, I think at this point, it's right around by the time this episode goes live, 74 days. So we're getting close. Pre-sale is about to go on sale. Excited for Fanatics Fest. But what do you guys think? Is it going to hurt Fanatics Fest being earlier? Help it? Hurt the national? Help it? Like, how do we feel about that? I feel like the market's in a really healthy spot. I feel like there's a lot of good energy in the market right now. So we'll see. But I'm excited for it. Pre-sale drops this week. Excited to be back in New York. Javits Center, Fanatics Fest, June 20th through 22nd, Brian? Is that the dates here? So coming up quick here. But time to get into today's interview. This is going to be a fun one with our friend Anthony, who flew up from Florida. So let's kick it over and check out Anthony on this week's podcast guest. All right, what's going on, guys? We are back with another interview. Today is going to be special. It's going to be a little different than a lot of the podcast guests we've had so far. I feel like this one is going to be, I know this one is going to be a lot more collector based. I feel like a lot of the content we've had so far has certainly been around building a flipping model, creating content and growing that audience. But today we're going to get a lot more into the collecting side of the hobby. So I'm excited to introduce today's guest, a friend and a card collector extraordinaire, Anthony Summerlin. Anthony, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Very excited for the opportunity to join the podcast.
This is going to be fun. I'm excited to have Anthony on here. Anthony is someone I've known for a while, but I got to give him an extreme amount of credit. Brian and I were talking about podcast guests, and we had Anthony kind of penciled in as somebody we wanted to have on here because of what he collects, his story. I think this will be a lot of fun to talk about. And I asked him very, very short notice. This was actually yesterday. Today's Friday. We're recording this. And I hit him up and I was like, hey, you want to be on the pod? He's like, yeah, for sure. Are you going to do this in Miami or is this in Columbus? I was like, well, no, we could do it on video. Like, no big deal. Like, we have a video link. And he's like, no, it looks really good in person. I'll be in Columbus tomorrow. This man got up at 5:50 in the morning. I think it was 5:50 and was in Columbus, Ohio by 11 a.m. So dedicated to this conversation, dedicated to the hobby. So I'm excited to have him. So Anthony, why don't we, after we got that little background in here, why don't we start with, who you are and how you got into trading cards?
Right. So my name's Anthony Summerlin. Got into trading cards as a kid, just going to my local card shop. Used to go to bowling alleys for card shows. I remember that.
Wow.
And I was actually always big into ripping as a kid. And I was thinking about this yesterday. I'm like, why was I so into ripping? Because I'm actually not a big gambling type of person, but I think it was because at the time, I wanted the cards of the best players, but I couldn't buy those. The only way to really actually try to get the ones I really wanted was to rip. So as a kid, I was really, really big into ripping, and then got into high school, kind of transitioned more into, I got into sports betting. That was like my thing. I got really, really passionate about sports betting and trying to get an advantage in that market. Did get back into sports cards later. My good friend Gio Gonzalez, he was a two-time All-Star. He made it to the major leagues, and I started to collect his cards. And that kind of brought me back to cards. And then started every year I would order one box of Prism. I remember that. And I would open it. It kind of would bring me back to my time as a kid. And then around the time 2017, 2018, I think Gary Vee started talking about sports cards again really hardcore, saying like this is like a whole like industry. And I started getting really into it, started buying, started doing the grading. Yep. A lot of just started with base, buying to grade, flip. I'm like, oh, this is interesting. Like, there's some money to be made. At the time, I was wagering on sports professionally. And during COVID came, and there's no more sports to wager on. And I'm like, oh, I've been doing good with these sports cards. Let me, fully dive into this. So I remember it was just one day, I'm like, I'm going to do this. And I said, I'm just going to spend this much amount every month and see how this goes. Just buying a grade. I knew it was very safe. You're buying cards for $20. They would grade at the time. They would sell for like $200-$300. And at the time, it was much easier to grade. There was a time, believe it or not, when you could buy cards for on eBay. Let's say buy 100 cards, not even like take them out of the top loader, send them to PSA, and you would get a pretty good gem rate. So I was doing a lot of that during COVID, and then these last few years, the market came down a lot, and I'm like, you know what? I'm starting to feel way more comfortable with sports cards just as an asset, as an industry going forward. The prices have really come down, and I said now I'm comfortable buying and putting in a significant amount of money, not just the grade flip game, and I just really started collecting. And yeah, that's basically where I'm at now. Mainly collecting, still doing some buying and selling, of course. Sometimes I get offered like really crazy offers. I'm not, fully set in life. So if someone makes me a substantial offer way higher than what I paid, a lot of times I may sell it. But for the most part, I'm just trying to amass and build my collection and do some buying and selling, basically to fuel the collection more now. Is where I'm at with it.
Yeah, that's I'm sure we'll get into this. This will actually be the first time we've ever shown cards during a podcast. Again, a lot of this has been about flipping and building bankroll and growing audiences, but this is going to be, we're going to see some really cool cards today. Anthony showed me a few, and Anthony's been a guy I've been friends with for a while. I remember some of our like FaceTimes and some of our IG. I think there's an IG live from back in the day. Anthony was a guy that I had really admired what he was doing. This was back when like NFTs were blowing up, crypto was in its like early days to me, not early days to crypto. But during the early COVID days, and I remember watching your page and be like, you were very, I think one of the things that caught my attention early, and I'm sure this conversation will develop, but it seems like you're big into like multiple things, cards, watches, crypto, some of those things. Am I on the right track there?
Yes. Like I am always curious about like the new kind of thing that's popping up. And I have this personality where when something like that comes up, I become like very obsessive compulsive about it, where I need to know like every single thing about it. So yeah, that's just my personality. So like when NFTs basically came out, I'm like, wow, this is, and also I've noticed in my life that when people tell you like, that's really, really crazy, stay away from that, that makes me want to get way more involved. Because I'll never forget when I first got into crypto, I told my friends and family, like, what are you talking about? This digital money? I'm like, and the more they didn't like it, the more I realized, well, that's an opportunity, because those are a bunch of people who don't believe in it that may end up believing it in the future. Once everybody believes in it, then the top is in. But yeah, the more I hear that, I kind of gets me more and more interested in it. So yeah, definitely that's the case. I'm into just all collectibles, all the non-revenue generating producing assets that people are like, why would you buy that? It doesn't do anything. I'm like, it doesn't matter. People want it. It's scarce. And so I believe in the, it increasing in value over time. So yeah, that's like my biggest passion that I'm into is like those kind of assets for investing and also collecting too.
Now, have you, because that's definitely one thing I want to talk more about this, and I know I will bring it up, but that is one thing I really admire about you, and I know about you as a collector now, is you are very OCD around understanding what you are buying.
Right.
Very big into that. First year this. Like, a lot of these things around, like, this is the first year Nebula. This is the first year Masterpieces. This is the first year they had Topps Chrome Superfractors. Like, all of these things, and we're going to see these here in a second. But have you always been that way in cards, really, since you got back in that 17, 18? Or, like, how did that come about?
I think that, no. I guess to an extent... No, not when I first came in, but I did always think when people would say to me, oh, that makes sense. Like, I remember, this is a shout out to you. You said in 2019, you're like, these LeBron first Prism cards are going to like be very important. And at the time I was trying to figure out what base cards to buy to resell. And I bought so many LeBron base cards in silvers. And I did so well because I ended up making the playoffs, and the market continued to go up, and I just made an absolute killing on that. So shout out to you on that. But then, of course, the rookie card, the first of it, and there's just so many things where, like, the first, why is Bitcoin the most expensive crypto? Because it was the first. So I had seen that play out so much over time in different assets and different collectibles that I know it's going to make sense and play out with sports cards. So yeah, it's something that I kind of always knew. And then yes, over the time, as I start collecting these super fractors and black 101s and stuff, I start to buy the ones I can find, but then it's like, okay, which are like the best ones? And then it always comes down to the first ones, are usually the first ones. And and then it gets even more crazy where I go from, now I don't want the first Black Prism. I actually want the first one of ones ever from the 90s. And those become like my holy grail chase. That's like the thing I'm most passionate about now is like the first one of ones that started all of this in sports cards. Because without someone taking the, doing that innovation in 1997, none of these one-on-ones would, maybe they would have come out, but you know what I mean? They started it all.
Yep. So what are the one-on-ones? What are the scarce things? Like, what are the first year things? Like, what are those things that you chase now?
So like I was saying, my favorite thing is the 1997 one-on-ones, because that's the first year that one-on-ones came out. So for football, it's Legacy Showcase. These are the first one-on-ones. I'll show this one. This is the Brett Favre 101. So there's 4 different versions, but there's only like maybe 10 true one-on-ones from 1997. And you can't really ever find any of these. Like, they come up just so rarely. So anytime I see these, I really chase after them. For basketball, it's this is the Ultra Platinum Medallion. So people sometimes don't like this card because there's only one difference, and it's not on the front, it's just on the back, which is that it says the only one of one masterpiece.
Okay.
And I've thought about that. I'm like, does that actually affect the price? And I go, no, because in Rolex, well, this is the way I think about it. In Rolex, there'll be old Rolexes where there's no difference except it says Tiffany on the inside. And that will increase the price 500 times. So I'm like, so these people are like, oh, there's only one minute difference. I go, well, in other collectibles, that minute difference means everything. So I do think over time, the fact that there's only one difference on the back being that 101, it will end up mattering. And the fact that it's just on the back, I don't think is a big deal. And then for basketball, also these were the first 101's Legacy. And then you move on to the early 2000s. The most desired cards are obviously the Logo Man autos.
Yep. Sure.
From Exquisite as well. This is actually Jason Williams' only Logo Man auto he ever had. He has no single, and he just has this dual with Pau Gasol, and I'm big on Jason Williams. For football, these are the first super fractors ever from 2005. 2006. Some people don't like them because of this red border.
The red border.
But it's still the first super fractor ever. Marvin Harrison, he only has 2 super fractors ever. I don't think I've...
So I think this is a great point because, this is what I talked about earlier, and you can see it, and this is what I admire so much about you, and this is like why I love our conversations, is because when we talk, and this is, I think that's kind of the difference between like where I'm at in like my journey and like where you at on yours, is like you, like, I feel like here I move 100 miles an hour. Right. We've got, breaking, we got shops, we got shows, like we have like so many different things. You are so focused on like finding the coolest cards, the best cards, the most desirable cards, the cards you want long term. Yep. And you are all in on those things. So right. Okay, this is the first top super. This is the first numbered cards ever. Why are they special? The difference between the front and the back. Like, so much about them. Like, we text and like, I'm sure you'll see them here, but it's like, some of the Calvin Johnsons and, why you like those. And they only have, you said it, Marvin Harrison has 2 1-of-1s. Like, right. That. I can't imagine there's a lot of people that know that. I can't imagine there's a lot of people that know Jason Williams only has 1 Logo Man, and it's a duel with Pau Gasol, and you own it. And I think those are the things that you've done really well, and I've tried to like emulate. Is, okay, I own the Ohtani bat knob. That was a card, like, and I took the, this is a prop to you, but I took that method when I bought it, because Ohtani, I think, has 2 bat knob 101 autos. Wow. I own the first one, right? It's like second or third year, right? Like, you start going into it and you're like, okay, well, if Ohtani has 50 bat knobs ever, by the time he's done in his career, he's the best player in baseball. If he has 50, the first one. Which one do you want? right?
course.
Topps has done the 50/50 chase, like that Logo Man did 1,000,000. So like they'll put in some of those other ones. So those moments might have like more demand, but ultimately it comes down to the first and like those
Right.
kind of things. So I've looked for a lot of that, but that's one thing I noticed, and I think the audience can probably pick up pretty quickly, is you are very meticulous about the information around the cards that you collect.
Yeah, absolutely. That's something that I've always been big on. Shout out to Beckett.com, by the way. This is not like I don't have to do some sort of crazy research to find these things out, by the way. If you guys go to Beckett.com and type in just, Shohei Ohtani bat knob, it'll show you how many exist of each one. And it's pretty fairly organized. Same Marvin Harrison Super Factory, you'll see there's only 2. You can like filter by base
Yeah, I
or
was
not.
going to say the filtering on Beckett's website
So just
is
using that website, it's pretty easy
tremendous.
to figure these things out. But also, sometimes I will buy these things not knowing and then look it up, be like, oh, wow, I actually didn't know that he only has 2 or 3. But yeah, that's just the way that I am. If I own something or I get into something, I have to know everything about it.
Now, what would you say lately you've had, like, is there anything you've had more success with picking up lately? Anything that's been like really, really hard to find? Any either way there?
Since it's one of ones, it's pretty difficult. The easier stuff to find is the more modern stuff, just because it's coming out now, so it's constantly coming out. I'll show something I've got recently that I really like. So this is a Jahmyr Gibbs Nebula. So PSA 10. I know you ripped this. You know how hard these are to grade.
Yeah.
2024 is a really tough card. Tough year to grade. These are the first ever nebulas for football. So for some reason, even though the nebulas were so popular in basketball, football didn't have nebulas until this year. So I've been buying a lot of the nebulas from 2024 because they're going to lose a license too. So there's not going to be any other nebulas made. This is for Prism. They did have nebulas before, but they were in Spectra. So these are the first. Excuse me if I misspoke before. These are the first ever nebulas. They were out of 20.
That's the first nebula from
27.
Prism.
Yeah,
First nebula in
This
football.
is first nebula for football. And
you have a lot of those,
and these
don't
are
you?
added to. Yes, I bought a lot. So the market doesn't care about these because the market is just so enthralled with Prism that because it doesn't have a Prism logo up here, even though to me they're very nice looking cards. They're not as interested in those, so I'm actually getting those for 1/20th the price of what these Prism Nebulas go for, and there's no competition either. When it pops up on eBay, it'll sit there for a while, and I've just been buying those as they come up.
Yeah.
And I just like the way they look. A lot of this, I know we talk a lot about like the values and the multiples and whatever. I like how they look genuinely. So even if they never become anything, I'm still okay owning them just because I like the way they look and they fit my collection nicely.
That's one of those things that is that I've learned to take with a grain of salt over the years, is that the market is imperfect, right? So because it says Prism, or because it says PSA 10, or because it says 1 of 1, not 1 of 2, or all these different things, that the market may react differently to it. Like the 99 RPA sells better than the out of 25 RPA, but the out of 25 is more limited than the out of 99, and they're both the same thing. Like that is an imperfect piece of the market, right? And like you talk about it here, but it's like I don't have a much better example than like this one currently, but I think that's one of the things over the years that I've looked at as, well, although the market says this, and I think you're the perfect example of this, that doesn't mean I believe in it at that price difference in the long run, because I'm sure the price difference between a Randy Moss Nebula from Prism 1 of 1 and the first ever Randy Moss Nebula numbered to 2 from Spectra is probably pretty substantial.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of imperfections in the market, and that's kind of somewhere, if people are trying to make money long term, you probably can take advantage of those imperfections because things change, obviously.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that people didn't like and collect in the 90s that now it's the most desired thing. And yeah, there's opportunities in that as well.
100%.
And just as a collector, there's opportunities for you to buy like really cool cards that people are overlooking for your collection.
100%. Now, what would you say I'm going to kick that back to you because you say that like those things change. What is something that you are now super interested in that you might not have been as interested in a year, 2 years ago? Like, what's something that you would say, yourself, you're guilty of?
So I would say that I'm into, you're saying?
Yeah, well, so you say that like things change, the
Right.
market reacts differently.
So,
A year ago, 2 years ago, you'd be like, hey, I don't believe in these as much. Something you might be
okay.
coming around on.
I would say it's these cards. And there's a reason why, and I've kind of analyzed the reason, and I disagree. So these are the 90s one-on-ones where I spoke about, and this is why. A lot of the biggest 90s collectors, they go for the set.
Yep.
So they want the set of the PMG Championship out of 50. They want the set of the PMG Red. No one is trying to do a set of one-of-ones. So what ends up happening is there's a lot less competition for the one-of-ones, which is completely different than modern. Yeah, so there's like an interesting dynamic with that where people will pay more for that out of 50 than the one-of-one. But in my opinion, over time, scarcity rules. So eventually, I do think a one-of-one is going to sell outsell an out of 50 just because eventually enough collectors are able to get their hands on the out of 50 versus the one day 2 guys are going to want it and it's just going to be a battle royale. Now there's a lot of people that disagree with me on this, but I just believe in one-of-ones. If you just look at any other market, if you look at watches, if you look at art, if you look at cars, every single market, the best one-of-one is the item that sells for the most.
Yep.
And with 90s, it's not entirely that way. There are the Gem Masters, which would outsell probably almost anything, but there are certain one-of-ones that are way more rare, obviously than out of 50 or out of 100,
Yep.
that sell for nearly the same value as their some of these other cards.
So you mentioned earlier that you started in sports betting, and just based on some of your your tendencies to really analyze and study the market. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm going to assume a lot of like your strategies, your analysis, your like compulsiveness around understanding these markets. Did you get that from like that sports betting? Like, did that help you in this transition to cards? Like, tell me a little bit more about that and like how you went from full-time bettor to now you have some of the most unique cards in the market.
So yeah, I got into the sports betting in high school.
Okay.
And was really really into it. And I actually just had a knack for it. I kind of like was winning from the gate, but a lot of it was because I was so obsessed with basketball that I knew these teams really really well, and I knew these players really well. I'm naturally decent with math, and I think that helped me a lot. And then I spent a lot of times on the sports betting forums, and there were some actual like good people posting like some good information and some professional sports bettors that were on there that I reached out to, and that helped me a lot. And then I kind of took an angle at the time that not many people were doing, where I mainly wagered on prop bets. So this at the time, what people weren't really wagering on this, and I tried to wager in a way that like was almost common sense, but like you wouldn't think of it. So I'll give you one example. What NBA team is going to score first in a basketball game? It seems very like arbitrary, like random. It's going to be very hard to figure that out. But actually, if you can figure out who's going to win the jump ball, then that team scores 63% of the time. And there would be situations where DeAndre Jordan would be jumping against Enes Kanter. Enes Kanter in that jump ball won't even jump because it's an inconsequential play. You get the ball in the first and third, the other team gets the ball in the second and the fourth. So all of a sudden, every single night, I would just find out who's going to win the jump ball, and then I would wager on that team. And the mathematics works that team scores like 63% of the time. There would be teams like the Pistons with Drummond, like they'd score all the time first because like they would go inside to him. The big man on the other team doesn't want to get in foul trouble early in the game, so he would basically just let him score. And like later in the game they'll foul him and he'll probably miss both free throws, but that wasn't the case at the beginning of the game. And then one more I'll give you guys is in football, what team is going to score first? So I went down a rabbit hole of what team is going to score first once I figured out the NBA one.
You went down a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
That doesn't surprise me.
So in football, I ended up finding out that there's some teams who receive and there's some teams who kick or defer. So I would find out the teams who are going to receive and then just wager on them to score first, because no matter what the coin toss was, the team that always chooses to receive and there's a team who always chooses first, they're going to get the ball first. So the same thing, I would just wager on that. And if you guys are going to try to do this now, it's not going to work anymore, because over the years, as people like myself and other people take advantage of this how do you say it? basically this inefficiency in the line, it eventually does get fixed. But that's kind of how I did the sports wagering. So it wasn't so much like wagering on the NFL game. That's going to be very, very hard. And for the people who are going to try that, like, kudos to you if you're able to do it. It's really, really difficult. But I basically would come into these smaller markets, and that's kind of where I would find my edge.
But it seems like almost like prospecting in cards, right? You're looking for an inefficiency in the market
Right.
that eventually the market says, this is an inefficiency. We need to correct this. The price goes up, and eventually the market becomes correct. I mean, it seems like that's kind of the same thing you're doing now with some of these cards, is trying to find something that you believe down the road the market will react to and say, hey, this should be priced higher. This is scarcer. And
Yeah.
am I onto something there?
Yeah, I for me, it's less the current players, because I feel like just with the current players, it's really so few that I think are going to have a great demand in the future. It's more so certain cards.
Yeah,
that I
not
think
necessarily the player,
sort of
just
like
more like
sets.
for sure the card,
like-
the first year prism, the first year numbered cards.
Right.
But I just mean in general, you're looking for something in the market that is inefficient. That
Right.
you're saying, this is cool, this is unique, this is a story, but it is more inefficient now than I expect it to be at some point in the future.
I think there's definitely an element to that, and I do that a little bit. Like, for instance, I was looking at like Jambalaya Jordan. This is a Pop 17 card. Recently, the LeBron Kaboom has seen a huge, from 2013 PSA 10, has seen a huge rise in its value. And I kind of always thought like that could very well happen because of Jambalaya Pop 17 is all like a $150,000 card. I thought, well, that LeBron, I do feel like they're kind of analogous. They're both super short print. They're both like the first of, so it kind of made sense to me. And now I've been even thinking about Color Blast PSA 10, because that's also the same population and actually more rare than than that 2013 Kaboom. So like I try to like definitely look for things like that. But I still think what drives my buying more than anything is just buying what I like. And I do think that if you really, really buy what you like and you're knowledgeable, which takes like years and years and years of really kind of honing, figuring out what you like, because you're also not going to like, a lot of times people will come into a new asset class. The things you're going to like at first, probably not going to be the best things. It's years of like kind of honing your taste and honing, figuring out what you like to then kind of end up in like situations where you can identify these cards that might be, valuable over time.
We talked a little bit about that with I think it was Josh with Roth Cards, was the value is in the lesson, is in the transaction, because
Right.
I think that's the big thing is like, you talk about some of these things where sure, could somebody come to the market and go all in 80 hours a week analyzing it, doing those things? Sure, but there's certain value, and this is one thing I believe, is that like, well, I've done this every day for 20 years. Like there's just knowledge, there's just things you learn. There's, when you live through Alfred Morris and you live through Doug Martin and you live through Linsanity and you live through Blake Griffin and you live through Brandon Jennings,
Yep.
50 points as a rookie. Like you live through some of these things, like you see that like not every QB from a class is going to be a Hall of Famer. Like it doesn't work that way. Like
Yep.
we go into the National and there's 5, 6, 7 guys that are all going to be first ballot Hall of Famers, and
For sure.
they don't, like, right? Like
Yeah.
I did really well on Derek Carr. Like I thought Derek Carr was going to be really good. He had moments. He went to the playoffs. Like Vegas Dave talked about him and it had a
Yeah.
bump. Like things worked out. But, I didn't buy Derek Carr thinking it was going to be Tom Brady. And I think that's one of those things that is like, that I've learned is that there is real value in the transaction. And, you can do all the market research for sure, but like ultimately at the end of the day, like somebody has to buy the card you end up, like if you're buying, you talked about buying some of these to flip. And I think some of the value in this and what you've learned is that like some things just take time and repetition. You just can't buy all of the knowledge. You really have to like go through the process of shooting free throws, not just learn, having Kobe Bryant or LeBron James tell you how to shoot free throws.
Yeah, definitely. You have to get out there. Whenever I'm like getting into a new set that I'm thinking about buying, the first thing I do is I don't like go crazy at first. I'll buy a version of the card of a lesser player. and then like kind of see how that is. If I do well with it, okay, then I'll keep doing it. But yeah, I definitely would recommend, or just if you can even just track it, like just see like, oh, someone bought one, you can like see the sales. So you don't necessarily need to do your own money if you're working with a smaller bankroll. But definitely, yeah, you have to get out there. You have to sometimes you have to buy and you have to take a loss. I've had a bunch of cards where I'll buy and take a loss, but then I have some that I'll buy and I'll do really well. And now I know going forward, okay, you keep that in the back of your head. Next time I see one, I'm going to buy because I remember I did good with that one. And exactly, that's the 20 years you start to learn over time. Well, I haven't done 20, you've been doing it longer than me. But yeah, you learn from your mistakes. I bought the backup quarterbacks like everybody, Kellen Mond. I did well with some of his stuff, but I got stuck with his Shield Auto. Still have it in case anybody wants it. But yeah, you have to go through those lessons, and that's just the way it is. If you're not taking losses, I would argue you're not buying enough.
100%.
You have to take those losses in order to get those those huge scores.
Yep.
Trust me, anybody who's made huge scores has some big losses that they can tell you about. If not, in my opinion, they're lying.
For sure. Yeah, failure is part of the process. I think you brought up an interesting point there, and this is actually one that I hadn't really thought about it that way, but now that you say it, I'm like, for sure. You mentioned when I'm trying to understand a market, I'll buy something smaller of like a lesser player to learn, okay, what's the demand like? I think this is a great example where it's like, if you believe in the Nebulas, maybe buying Mahomes as the first one may not make the most sense, but there's an opportunity. But I did this. I've done this with a lot of the things I've enjoyed collecting with my wife. F1, 2020, and Disney Chrome. I got offered cases of Disney Chrome when it first came out. And I was like, well, I'll buy some of it. Like, I'll keep one to rip with my son one day. Because I collect these to share this with my son. I've told this story before, but like, my wife used to work at Disney and she did the Disney college program. We've taken my son there a few times. Like, Disney is a big part of our life. I'm not a Disney adult, like, for sure. That's not me. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just that's not me.
Yeah, you seem to get really giddy.
No, that's not me. But I enjoy collecting the cards. So one of the things I did is when they first came out, I ripped a couple with her, started collecting them. But one of the things I started to do is like I wanted to get the refractors. So there's only a few numbered parallels in this. I want to say there's 10. Don't quote me on that. I would have to check the math. But what I did is like, okay, I want to get the base refractor set in a PSA 10. So I start getting some, I start grading them, I start buying them online. And in the beginning, it was like, okay, cool, this is easy. But as time progressed, and I'm like, okay, I'm liking the set more. It's been fun to share it with her. Yep. I started learning a lot more about it.
Down the rabbit hole.
And it went down the rabbit hole. And it's like, okay, similar to F1, these cards are not printed perfectly. F1 had defects on the back, some of those like indents on the edges of the card. Topps Chrome Disney a lot of it was off-centered. So there wasn't a lot of perfectly centered copies. So I've been working on this refractor set for a while, and I started realizing, okay, not everybody is grading the lesser characters. So some of these cards I'm after are Pop 1s, Pop 2s, Pop 3s. And I'm like, okay, these are super hard to find. And not only are you not grading the lesser characters out of a 100-card set, they're also not centered super well, right? So as I learned that, and I'm like, okay, we're enjoying collecting it together. Then I started to dabble into some of the dual autos, some of the super fractors. I own a couple of those, and I started getting more into some of the numbered cards. And it's like, okay, and I started as like I'm just gonna do something simple with this. And as I've learned more about it, and I've got more experience chasing some of these sets, I'm like, okay, and you really you start to understand it more. And I had very similar experiences with the 2020 F1, and you start collecting that more, and what to buy and how to get your feet wet. Like I didn't buy a Lewis Hamilton Dynasty patch auto as my first card. I didn't buy a Max first year card number auto. I started with Charles Leclerc autos and George Russell numbered. And as you understand those markets, I think that's a really great tip for anyone is there's ways to get into the market. Some people are just like, balls to the wall. Let's go buy the best card we can buy and just go in. But I've had a lot more success, and I think that's a method I definitely take where it's like there are ways to get into it, and if you start small and naturally learn, it can definitely do you favors.
I think that's everything in life I've noticed where, if you want to learn about, like you're saying, these sports cards, but even like stocks or crypto, the best way to learn, go buy some stock. don't go crazy. You can even just buy $100 of a stock or buy $100 of Bitcoin. By default, if you now own it, you're now paying attention to it more. You're now seeing the price fluctuations on a day to day. You'll start to read more articles about it. You'll start to just learn naturally by owning the card or the asset or whatever it may be. So yeah, I think that's the best way to just get into it is start by just buying a small amount, and then it'll eventually evolve and you'll become more knowledgeable. And over time, if you stay consistent with it, you stay working hard and kind of just continuing to get more and more knowledgeable, then it should end up being a beneficial thing.
Agreed. Now I want to pivot again here for a second. I want to come back to the cards and the chase and some of your plans there. But we share a similarity outside of a lot of the collecting trends here. But you also run a card show.
Yes.
So, where is it? When is it? And how did this start? As somebody that is involved in that as well, I'm very curious on how your journey started and where it's at now.
So, the show is called the Courtside Card Show, Miami. It's May 16th and 17th this year. It started about 4 years ago. I had a friend. He was actually a teacher, and he obviously COVID happened, and he reached out to me. He's like, hey, like, what's going on with these cards things? He got really into Pokemon, and he also did some basketball training, and he had a facility. And I came to the facility one day to watch a game that they were hosting because they had like a league there, and he said like, hey, like, do you want to do a show here? And I'm like, yeah, because I was telling him that like I love going to shows because when I go to shows I can see the cards in person. I can really tell the condition. Whereas when you buy on eBay, sometimes these people send you cards that are destroyed.
Yeah.
So I really liked going to shows, and I was going to a lot of shows at the time. He's like, yeah, let's do a show. So I ended up doing a small show in the basketball gym to start. I think that's how a lot of shows start, and it was actually very successful. Honestly, too successful. There was way too many people in this basketball gym. During COVID, so we ended up moving to a bigger facility in Brickell, Miami, which is like in the heart of Miami, which is like very, very important to me because I want people coming to like a Miami show for it to be in Miami, not be like 45 minutes or an hour away, because I know Miami is a destination city. So we end up moving it to a bigger facility, and it did extremely well. At the time, he wasn't as much into sports cards. He actually kind of pivoted and got way more into real estate. He did extremely well buying Airbnb houses, and he just got like fully into the real estate. He kind of found his niche after teaching. He actually now has continued doing the real estate. Shout out Mikey. But now I was like without a partner. I'm like, oh, this is going to be really, really hard to throw the show like completely alone. And then recently, my good friend Nick reached out. He's like, hey, let's relaunch a show. Like, everyone's always asking you about it. When are you going to relaunch it? Why don't you bring it back? So we're bringing it back this year. And that's basically how it's evolved. And we've gotten a great reception. A lot of people have signed up. Through the years, I've traveled to so many shows, and I've made a lot of connections in the hobby. So it's been a little bit easier to kind of like relaunch it and get people very quickly and dealers to come. And thank you to all my dealers who have signed up. It's been exciting. There's been a lot of heartache, but it's been exciting.
What would you say some of the heartaches are with running a show, putting it on? What have you learned?
It's just everything. Like the way that I am, I'm a perfectionist. So like every single day, I am doing something for the show, and I want it to be as good as possible. So it's just constantly creating content for marketing. Getting the vendors to come, getting the vendors to sign up, working with the venue. A lot of times the venues they're not the easiest to deal with. They have a lot of rules, and you have to kind of play by their rules. And then for this event, a really important thing to me that I think card shows have been lacking is that there's no events outside of the card show happening really. And when you look at something like Art Basel, a lot of people go to Art Basel not for Art Basel. They go for the events surrounding Art Basel, which then kind of creates a better experience. So for me, I've really wanted to create a really, really special event, which I have planned for this year, something outside of the show, kind of as a give back to the vendors and the corporate sponsors that I think is going to be like really nice, and something that I think the hobby is sorely needed, where there's like really really great events outside of just the card show, which is the card show is great.
Yep.
I'm looking forward to that too. But I also think that there's opportunity for there to be surrounding events, either showrunner doing or even corporate sponsors just taking advantage of the fact that, hey, we're going to have all these thousands of people in this city. Why don't we do an event on Friday night or Saturday night beyond just a trade night? And trade night's also amazing. I love it. Yep. But for older gentlemen and just people that are not kids, yep, they want something outside of a trade night. They kind of want a different type of experience. And I think that the hobby has, a ways to go with that. And I do think that that's a big deal on why, like, art, it got so big. I read this book called Boom. It's a great book. And it talks about what created, like, the art phenomenon. And a lot of it was just these amazing events that these guys would host. And they'd have celebrities come. And then, like, the only way you can get invited back to this event is if you paid a certain price for the painting. If not, you didn't get invited, so everyone wanted to go. So I think that, these events are play a bigger role in the growth of the asset class as a whole than people would think. And I'm trying my best to kind of bring that to sports cards.
I understand the perfectionist piece very much so. So much time and effort goes into running a show, and it sounds like you've learned a lot from doing it. Yeah. Let me ask you this. Brian and I have never been. The intention would certainly be to go to this one. I think anytime you can get to Miami in May, it's certainly not a bad place to be. So I think Brian and I are going to try to get down there. But where do you host the show? Is it like, is this a convention center? Is this a hotel? Like you said, it was in a basketball gym. Where is it now?
So now it's in a Hyatt Regency, but the Hyatt Regency is connected to this thing called the James L. Knight Center. So they have this huge convention space. This convention space actually overlooks the ocean. So there's windows from the floor up to the ceiling on the entire left side of the room. So when you're in the room, you can see boats coming by. There's palm trees. It kind of gives off the whole Miami vibe. Sometimes I feel like the venues for shows are not the best, where they may be too big, or it's just kind of like four walls. And so I think that this venue is really cool, where it has like this element of, you get the Miami feel from inside, and there's like natural light coming in. So it's really nice. And it's in, like I said, the heart of Miami. It's in downtown Miami. Okay. Really close to the Miami Heat Stadium, like 10 minutes away from South Beach, 15 minutes away from the airport. It's basically right in the center of Miami.
Seems like you've spent a lot of time on that location, because I think one of the things Brian and I talked about with, we go to a lot of shows, have traveled all over the world to go to card shows, and I think you have a lot of the things, it sounds like, that make a show successful. Proximity to the airport. I think the destination city definitely helps. I think flying to Miami is definitely not the worst spot you could ever fly or drive to a card show in. But one of the things you said, and I think, again, I'm assuming because it's at the Hyatt Regency, the show and the hotel rooms, same spot.
Yep.
That, I think, is one of the... We talk about this a lot with Dallas. This is one of the reasons I think the Dallas card show...
Yeah.
The longevity piece is a big one. I know that for sure. But it's one of the reasons I believe so much in the Dallas card show is you buy and you walk right upstairs. And yep. I think that is something... You don't have to fight for Ubers. You don't have to walk with all your cards and worry about the weather. I think that is something that does a card show a lot of favors. You agree with that?
Yeah, I agree. And I think this location specifically is really good, because not only can you just go up and down from your room down to the show, but there's also the greatest restaurants are one block away. There's literally this great restaurant called Zuma a block away. And there's like, bars, nightclubs. There's like just everything you can think of is basically in walking distance from the show. So that was a big reason why we picked that show. But most important thing to a show, because I didn't hear you mention it, is the vendors. You need to have vendors. If you don't have quality vendors,
for sure,
I don't think your show is going to have success long term. So without vendors, my show wouldn't be what it is. And I've been very lucky that a lot of the top vendors are traveling in for my show. You would think a Miami show, but actually 80% of my vendors are from outside of Miami, from just connections we've built. So yeah, having the quality vendors was a very big deal. Just 'cause I do feel like there's a lot of shows where you'll go to and you'll have to look through like 5 or 10 tables sometimes to get to like that good table. And so we've really made it a point to try to have a lot of quality inventory at the show, and dealers who are like realistic, and they make sales because they have good prices. That was also a very important thing for us.
Yeah, I think the vendor thing is just can't go unstated on how important it is, especially like you know vendors who come back.
Yeah, and for promotion too.
For sure, the Shipshawana card show, right, that I'm involved in, like that show is built on a real solid core group of vendors, folks that have been setting up at every single one when it was in a much smaller venue to the 70,000 plus square feet it's in now, and you can't overstate how important that is when you're trying to build it, because I think you can attest to this. If you go to a show one time and it's awesome, you'll go back.
Yep.
If you go to a second time and it's terrible, now you're skeptical, right? So trying to go to a show, like you've got to try to maintain that reputation, because if somebody has a bad experience, if it's not as busy, if it's not like, if those things happen, it's like, was this show going downhill? And then it's hard to kind of reverse that. And I think that the vendors are a big reason why a show can be successful or not successful.
Yeah, so that's something me and my partner talk about a lot too. Is the vendors are big, but also just continuing to add layers to the show, add different events to the show. Just try to bring something new, bring something fresh to the show, and not necessarily something that you like. You got to think, what are my attendees gonna like? What are my vendors gonna like? Because there might be something you like, but it's not actually gonna enhance the experience for the customer or the vendors. So that's one thing, that every show we want to add something new to the show, and we already have ideas for the future shows. But yeah, that's something that we think is very important, and that we want to do with the show is like, we don't sometimes show, I feel like they kind of rest on their laurels, and they're like, okay, I built it up, it's good, it's amazing, and all of a sudden, like you're saying, all of a sudden you have one mature, like, oh wait a second, what? And then it starts to, these businesses, they say they don't die overnight. It's a slow drip. So that's something that we're really cognizant of, and we constantly want to continue elevate the show. Our goal is not to stay in this venue; it's to even grow bigger and potentially be one of the biggest, best shows in the world. There's a Miami Beach Convention Center. It's an extremely big facility. That's a longer term goal of ours, but that is the goal. It's not just to stay where we're at; it's to continue to elevate and create the best experience for the attendees and for everyone involved.
Now, how many dealers do you have now? How many tables are we looking at?
It's going to be 300 tables for a show, which is basically the room entirely packed. It's 30,000 square feet. But again, like for us, quality. It's not just about how many dealers. I tell people, hey, our show is going to have some amazing cards. That was one of the things too. We went after dealers who only set up at the National, or even collectors who don't even set up. We're like, no, you're gonna come set up at this show. Like you gotta come, you gotta set up a table, at least have the stuff on display. Because a lot of times, I mean, even myself, I love going to shows. Even if the cards aren't for sale, they bring amazing stuff you don't see all the time. You're just happy to see it.
Yep.
And that's also how I learn about certain cards that I get into, and that's why one of the things I like going to shows is sometimes I'll see something like, oh wow, this looks really amazing in hand, and you kind of get ideas from just going to shows. So yeah, we've been really trying to get the biggest collectors and dealers who don't always set up at shows to come to our show and set up, and we've been successful so far. So. And
you said 2 days?
Yeah, so it's going to be Friday, Saturday show.
Okay.
We figured a lot of people are coming to Miami. They want to experience Miami too. So Saturday night, we kind of see it as Friday, Saturday, you get your card fix. And then Saturday, everyone, you can go out and enjoy Miami. And yeah. And then on Sunday, actually, Messi plays.
Wow.
Yeah, Inter Miami plays the Sunday. So if anybody wants to go to that game the following day, they do play then.
There we go.
Yeah.
Well, before I wrap it up here, I do have a question around some of the card stuff. You have an incredible collection, some really, really cool pieces. What would you say, like, it's somebody that has some of the stuff you have? You have Logo Mans, you have Exquisite, you have 97 101s, 1997 101s, you've got Nebulas, you have so much. What are some of those cards that, like, you are hoping to acquire? If we sat down a year from now, like, what are you looking to add to the collection?
Oh, I'd love to add any of the 1997 101s I can find. If I can get one of Jordan, that'd be amazing. There's very few. A lot of them are tied up in collections. any Marbury 1 of 1 from the 90s because that's someone who I collect. So a Marbury 90s, maybe a big PMG green of a player. I think even though those are not 1 of 1, those a lot of times kind of are 1 of 1s because the 4 or 5 that are out there, those people are not selling.
Yeah.
I mean, they may sell cards in their collection, which a lot of times they won't, but it's the last card they're gonna sell. So
Yep.
a big PMG green would be great. And then just 2012 Prism blacks. I love those. 2013 Prism for basketball. Those were the first blacks. Any I can find of those people, I'm a buyer in the early super fractors. It's tough with these things. You don't even when you find them, it's almost like a miracle sometimes to find these certain ones. When you ask it, it's like some of these things. I just feel very lucky to find some of them. So it's hard to even like think like I would never have imagined some of the cards that I've been able to find. I've gotten lucky. So it's hard to say. Just more of the 1 of 1s that I like. I can't think of anything in particular off the top of my head.
Just continuing to get lucky and finding something that you're searching for.
Yeah, just any of the big 1 of 1s. I mean, they're so hard to find. So anytime they come across them, I'm always really excited to add any new 1 of 1s. But yeah, I would say probably the 90s ones. Those are the ones that kind of, because they're the hardest. They're by far the hardest to find. Some of these things, if you pulled it as a kid, you might have not even known. Like, do you turn around every card to read that it says 1 of 1 masterpiece on the bottom? Maybe not.
Yeah, especially when it's the first time ever.
Yeah, and some of these, it's subtle differences. Like this Shaq, the only difference is that the font is in purple. So the other card does look somewhat similar. So yeah, the 90s 1 of 1s, that's kind of what I'm most passionate in trying to find now.
I love it. I always end the podcast with the same question. So I want to ask you, if you were starting over today, knowing what you know now about the card market, what advice would you give to yourself?
I would say buy cards to grade. Run that up as high as you can, and then go to shows, learn about the cards, and take the money that you make from the grading and buy the cards that you love, the cards that resonate with you, the cards that when you look at, they just make you feel a certain kind of way because, that's how these make me feel, and just figure out what that is for you. And not because someone else likes it or because so-and-so posted it, because you genuinely love the card. Yeah. And again, that takes time. I've had cards I really loved, and later I'm like, why did I love that card? And then it's like, maybe I was influenced by so-and-so. So yeah, just trying to figure out what you genuinely like yourself. Basically what you would want to own, almost like if, you can never sell it. So you're not even thinking about that. You're just thinking like, I just love this card. I love owning it. I would say, to do that. Awesome. But yeah, for people starting, buy cards to grade, I think is the safest way. Because if you buy a card to grade, if it gets a 10, you make 3-4 times your money. And if it gets a 9, a lot of times you break even. So I think it's a very safe way to break into the hobby and build up your bankroll to get the cards you really love.
And last but not least, where can people find you? You and the card show.
Yes. So summertime, 1 of 1 on Instagram. And then the card show is at Courtside Card Show.
Love it. Thank you for a 12-hour notice, less than a 12-hour notice to fly to Columbus, Ohio to be on the podcast. Hopefully next time we talk, we'll be in Miami for the card show.
Yes, you better be there.
That's all I got for now, guys. All right, shout out to my friend Anthony, summertime 1 of 1 for coming up on such short notice, filming a podcast with us. Hopefully we'll be down in Miami at his show soon. But make sure you guys check him out on IG. Good people. Definitely super knowledgeable and super into collecting cards. So appreciate Anthony and the time here this week. Let us know, again, as always, down in the comments who you guys want to see on these episodes here soon. We're working on Pokemon. We're working on some different stuff, not your maybe your everyday guest. So we've got a couple things in the works. Hopefully we'll get into those before too long. We do have an event coming up with Gary V at the shop. He is supposed to be in town. V Friends release week is May 7th. Gary is going to be on town on that Saturday from 12 to 3 for a trade day at the shop. I don't know if we talked about that on the pod yet, but Gary V will be in town. Hopefully we'll have time to film an episode with him. That's really something I would really, really enjoy. So hopefully we'll be able to have Gary on the pod here soon. If we do, we'll hopefully solicit some questions so we can get some questions from the listeners, maybe get some questions answered for anybody at home who would be curious of, or who would want to ask a question to Gary. So more on that soon, but if you're in the Columbus area, that's Saturday, May 10th, 12 to 3 at the shop. Gonna be crazy, but stop on by for that. Last but not least, as we wrap up this week's episode, the latest launch list, the stuff coming out this week is bananas. Again, this is always subject to change. You guys know these products ebb and flow quite a bit. Some of these things we might have even talked about in the past, so they might end up getting delayed more. But at the moment, it's insane. Is it Futera? Is that how it's pronounced? Incredible Collection Soccer. I've not ripped any of this before, but I feel like this is a fun product I would enjoy ripping. I think the last year's box, honestly, Brian, is built like a wine bottle like holder. If you look at them, it's real like tall and vertical. It's actually kind of crazy. I think that's how last year's is built. This year doesn't appear this way. It looks to be a little different, but definitely it looks like a really nice packaging. It's a 5-box case, so 12 individual. What is that? 12 individually numbered cards, $2,000 a box. Wow. 9 game or training worn memorabilia cards, at least two on-card autographs, and at least one 23-karat gold-plated framed chase card. Wow. 12 cards. What is that, Brian? 12 packs per box, 2 cards per packs. So 24 cards total for $2,000. Wow. Any of my soccer fans out here would love some insight on how the resale is on some of those cards. It would be a fun one to rip, but definitely a lofty price tag there. Immaculate Basketball drops this week. Origins Basketball H2. Select Baseball. Upper Deck AEW Wrestling. SPX 24-25 Hockey. F1 Finest. I believe that's the first time they've ever put that out. Leaf Collective Football. Onyx Vintage Collection Baseball. Donruss, Panini Donruss EuroLeague Basketball. Donruss Optic Football is scheduled to release. I hope that is accurate. We'll see. I don't feel like we got FOTL this week, so I feel like that's one that's going to get pushed. I don't anticipate that dropping if we haven't got FOTL, so that may be a repeat on next week's episode. Top Stranger Things High Tech and Tops 3 Basketball. Double-digit products this week. Again, we'll see if any get pushed, but a lot of stuff on there. Obviously, Optic Football 24. That's a big-time release. Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams, Marv, Neighbors, Penix, McCarthy, those guys getting downtowns, and then some autos of guys like Penix, McCarthy, I think Ladd's in there, Keon Coleman. I'm trying to think of some of the guys that are Panini and Tops. I think Ladd and Keon are 2 of those guys. Brian Thomas signs for sure in Panini. Unfortunately, top 4 QBs, wide receivers, tight end. A lot of those guys are Tops right now, but we'll see who ends up being an Optic Football. A lot more on next week's episode. Let us know what you guys want to continue to see added to the pod. Leave us those reviews on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, thumbs up on YouTube. Anything like that helps. Appreciate y'all for listening. See you guys next week. Peace.